to another episode of the KQL Cafe. We didn't do one in March due to some absences, people going to Israel and catch up with the latest developments and other events. Anyway, we're back in April, and actually April is a bonus pack. We'll have 2 sessions. So today we have Alexander Sloutsky with us from Microsoft, and he will present later. And then later this month, as usual, on the last Tuesday of the month, we'll have Thijs Leconte with us. So, let's continue with what's new. A couple of news for you. So first of all, and of course, this is for everyone who is working with Microsoft Defender. Microsoft recently released in public preview the behaviors in advanced hunting. Okay, behaviors were basically introduced, as far as I can understand the documentation. Haven't done, honestly, that much yet. But the idea is to reduce the amount of alerts that we will get maybe from Microsoft Defender for Cloud App policies, where you have those policies like your mass download, etc. And those, could make some noise. So the idea is that, those Defender for Cloud App anomaly alerts are going away, or you turn them off. But the signals will remain there, and the signals will actually, flow into these 2 tables, and we will have signals for all the activities that you see on the right here in the black and white table. And then it's basically up to you, to decide, what type of detections you want to develop, and maybe even, go down to the entities when you're maybe only interested in certain entities like IP addresses, usernames, etc. So yeah, I guess for all security operation centers across the globe, that's a big relief, to fight alert fatigue. And on the other hand, we can now create much more fine-grained detections. So next. For those working with Microsoft Sentinel, this was already a feature available in Sentinel land. So we have those so-called near real-time detections, where you didn't have to program a schedule, but it will basically, look at the data as it came in, as the data is being ingested. And now we have the same capability also in Defender 365. And of course, with the same limitations as we had in Sentinel. Now, I don't meant to be limitations to be negative, because this is simply by design. I just explained this this morning. Imagine you have an airplane, and when it's landed, the data is actually written to the log analytics. But when the airplane is still in flight, you can see the airplane, but it's not landed yet, so the data isn't written to the database. So what we basically can do with near real-time detections is while the airplane is landing on the ground. I hope that slowly works for you to understand the feature. We can already catch like, okay, there's an airplane coming. Now, due to that, the main limitation is basically we can only run a query across one table, because it would be quite difficult to do joins. And then we have some other KQL language limitations. Again, not limitations in a negative sense, but simply because they don't make sense in such a scenario. So this will greatly help you, to create more real-time based detection, even now within Microsoft 365 Defender.
I think it's still a good thing, because I haven't found it in the documentation yet. But for instance, in Sentinel, once you have the near real-time detections, you can only have 20, and there's a limitation on that. But I haven't found it yet for the Defender for Endpoint, how many you can do. But there might also be a limitation in the number of detections you can do. Because also you need the data to be available faster from the endpoint if you want to do proper near real-time or continuous detections.
Yeah. And maybe to add to that, having had a discussion this morning while introducing Sentinel to a customer, I mean, by no means it's meant that you just create, every rule as a near real-time detection. First of all, that will cause a huge load on the back end. But my argument is also, you really want to focus on those things that are super important and where you also have planned to perform an immediate reaction, because it really doesn't make sense when you are going to create real-time detections and then, you classify them as low and you look at them the other day, then I guess, it's not that worth to have them run in real-time mode. But that's just my opinion. Next one, please.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, a little one. A change in the data schema was made. So historically, those three tables would basically report NTLM with capital N, small TLM, and that has now been changed to all capital letters. So if you have any custom detections, make sure that you either use the case insensitivity flag or that you write your queries correctly. Otherwise, you might miss one. The example here on your right will catch both. And if you used to have, equals, make sure, to go over your repositories and query scripts and snippets or wherever you have stored them and to adjust those queries accordingly.
Yes, I guess there's a lot of detections, for instance, with usernames or with command line. So you always have to check your data to make sure that case insensitivity and case sensitivity is used where required. Because I've seen a lot of detections where usernames were case sensitive, and then if a attacker used capitals, then it wouldn't trigger the detection. So it's always good to think about your data and to make sure that it's working as you designed it.
Yeah, especially when you're using watchlist and Sentinel, I see that error happening as well. The guy who implemented it did write it correctly, and then you have someone updating a watchlist, let's say for a break class account, and he might enter it in all capital letters. And if you haven't, written your query correctly, then you might miss that break class account log on. Good. Next one. So we have a couple of updates in the device info table as well in the device network info table. So if you can, sorry, Johnny.
I thought I showed the message, but
sorry, yeah. Well, that's just a message in the message center. So there was no blog about this.
Cool.
Yeah, but if you go to the next page, in summary, basically. The device info, what's changed is that the version numbers are now, 2 digits. Mobile devices, in terms of device type, are now also correctly identified as mobile instead of unknown. The merged information that is now available for the onboarded devices. And last but not least, the network vendor is now also shown for the network adapter card. So, quite funny when I run that, when you actually realize how many network adapters you might have in your environment. Now, on the next page, to me, actually even next. Yeah.
Next. Next. Yeah.
Yeah. So here we have a couple of new members into the tables. So in device info, we have the sensor health state, quite useful. Maybe not for hunters and SOC people, but for those that have to make sure that actually all the devices are sending signals. And yeah, this is a great opportunity. Usually people will hopefully, on a daily basis go over their Defender recommendations list and see if there's any devices, not working. And believe me, it happens all the time. New network switch, new proxy, other proxy configuration. Yeah, and despite the fact that we spent so much time during the implementation to make sure that network connectivity was provided, suddenly there it goes. Maps is no longer working, or the clients cannot reach the backend at all. So definitely worth to consider creating a detection rule for that, at least on a regular basis, and yeah, to be serious about devices that have health state issues. Yeah.
Is this data also something you would use in a Sentinel workbook? And if you have it in Sentinel?
Well, first of all, as per my testing, that attribute is not yet being synchronized. So if you're using, what Johnny is talking about is that if you're using the Microsoft 365 connector, which by the way is no longer in preview, it was in preview like 2 years and it has always been working nice, but for some reason there was always that preview flag on it. And one of the things I noticed that, you can select all your tables to be synced into Sentinel if you want to have longer data retention, etc. That's maybe a story for another session. But not always all the attributes that we have in Microsoft 365 schema are instantly also synchronized into Sentinel. So at least until yesterday, that wasn't there, but I assume that's always a matter of fact of a couple of days or weeks, or until someone kindly, contacts Microsoft about that. The next one, internet facing. To be honest, I was not able. I can pretend that I have quite some environments available to do some data mining, but I haven't seen the next one in any environment. So maybe it's because there hasn't been any internet facing devices in those systems, or maybe that attribute is maybe lacking behind. The next one is excluded, and its excluded reason is also quite a useful addition to the table. And while I was actually sharing this with customers, I noticed that many people aren't obviously aware of the fact that in Defender for endpoints, we can exclude devices. Yeah. Now, from people with a systems management background, we always get a question, can I delete that device, right? And and of course they have their systems management hat on. But no, we cannot delete, and we don't want anyone to delete devices, because from a security perspective, if we were able to delete devices, we could delete evidence. Yeah. In addition, this is the log analytics workspace, and there, you don't delete records. Yeah, they just fall off the table when the data retention is over. Nevertheless, having devices in your Defender for Endpoint inventory can be annoying, because if they carry on to be alive, in the sense of being in the database, they will negatively impact your vulnerability management score. Because if that device that is no longer alive and kicking, but still has some, vulnerabilities, then it will count towards your vulnerability management score. So already quite a while ago, Microsoft introduced a capability to actually exclude devices. You can do that manually. You can do that via an API. And think of when you're using something like ServiceNow and you're managing your asset management there, that when you dispose a device, or when a device got stolen or broken, that if you mark that device as, lost, obsolete, whatever, to trigger maybe an API call towards MDE to exclude that device. Now, with this information available in the table, we of course can query that information. We can provide it maybe to those interested in an audit, to prove why did we exclude the device, etc.
I think it's also a good way to turn it around, because sometimes you exclude a device because that team says, it was reimaged, and then they put it in the closet. And 2 years later, someone says, hey, I need a new device, picks it out of the closet, and then you have a ton of vulnerabilities in your network, and everyone thinks it's gone. It's removed from your management system, from your Intune, because it's more than 180 days offline, so it's almost deleted everywhere. But then all of a sudden it pops up again. So it's good practice to monitor your excluded devices every now and then to make sure that you have if it's an active device, then you need to remove the exclusion. And also the exclusion is good for the first 7 days, because after 7 days vulnerabilities won't count in your total score. And also after 30 days, then it's also being removed. It's layerly removed from your system. So
cool. So the next one. Yeah, and this, little shout out to our guest from, I believe it was in February or January even. We had Bert Young on the call, and I mean, Matt Zorich started this whole thing, right? Like 365 days of KQL, then followed by Ugur, who did the same, or are still doing the same, I believe, for Intune related queries. And Bert Young took up the challenge, and he has now made a promise to himself and the rest of the world to have a continuous pipeline of KQL queries around the MITRE ATT&CK. So definitely worth following that one, looking for inspiration, or even consider enhancing your detection on top of what we already get out of the box from Microsoft. Yeah. Good. So that's basically it in terms of what's new. As always, if you feel like I missed something, or if you like to bring something to our attention, you know how to reach us. So let's continue
with the most important slide of the day for our session.
Yeah.
Da-da-da-da.
Yeah, so we are super, super excited, especially since last night, since I saw the agenda that Alexander has been preparing. So yeah, for those, maybe a little quiz, who knows Alexander? Or if not, who has done the Kusto Detective? And that's actually how I found his name. So without further ado, welcome Alexander, and stage is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Alex. And so, yeah, my name is Alexander Sloutsky. Actually, my team is the one that is developing the Kusto engine. So I prepared a few slides. Let me just share them. And I was thinking that it may be interesting to you guys to hear how the Kusto KQL was started, what were the reasons, who was the team, what we are doing these days. So I'm going to share. Let me know when you see it.
Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. So I'm really happy to be here, like having a team that is or people who are looking on the KQL extensions on the language and the implications on the Sentinel and security is very exciting to me. And so, as I said, my team is the one that is developing in Microsoft the product. We are located in Israel mostly, and so here's a little bit history how we started all of it. Like it's been about 9 years. Then we actually started the project itself called Kusto. So if you look in the Kusto history as a table, and we want to argue to look on the events and what was this the earliest event that we are celebrating is the birthday, that we celebrate on March 8th. And so it was the first time when we actually had some working code that was able of taking a big table and processing it and doing count, taking, filtering. So we're about, like, if we're going back to history, about 9 years ago, we were early beginning. Now, who were we? Who actually was the team that was doing that? So we're actually looking on 4 founders that started all this. You can see them here on the picture. I was lucky to be one of those. And all of us are still working on the project after 9 years. I'll go from the left to the right. Like Evgeny Ryzhik is the brain, is actually the first and it's the most smartest person I know on Earth. He's capable of understanding how engines work and to code one. Actually, the Kusto version that we are running today is the third version. You don't see it, but we're actually changing it on the beneath. And the Kusto engine that we are running today, we call it V3. That means that this person actually envisioned and changed the Kusto 3 times past 9 years. And he's really, really smart guy. So without him, it wouldn't be happening, for sure. Ziv Kaspi, sitting next to Evgeny, is the architect. He's the person who knows how to build scalable systems and how to stitch things together, what will work, what won't. He has a vast experience in Microsoft. He's been working in Microsoft for 20 years or so, and he's very, very nice person to work with. I'll skip myself. I'm the engineering manager of Kusto, but I'll move to Oded Sacher. He is the manager of Kusto. He was the one who is managing all of us. He knows how to negotiate when we don't agree. We usually don't agree one with the other. Like here, you can see I'm smiling. That's not usually the case. We are arguing a lot, having different opinions. We rarely agree on anything. We usually have more opinions than people. So Oded is the person who knows how to actually to stitch them together, how to make us work together as a team. He's a great manager, and he's the one who is leading Kusto for the past 9 years. So here we are sitting together on the couch and holding the Kusto flag all together. That picture was taken a few years ago, but we are still happy to work together and be on this journey. So moving a little bit further, like the frequent question, why it's called Kusto? I'm not sure if you know it, but why we decided to actually to call it Kusto? It's named after Jacques-Yves Cousteau, who was an ocean scientist. He's the guy who pioneered and developed great tools and was also inventing technology for ocean exploration back in the 1950s and even before. So the aqualung, the scuba diving, the bathyscaphe, it's all things that Jacques-Yves Cousteau was inventing. And now when we look on the big data, ocean of big data, and we wanted to think how we see ourselves, it was very inspiring to see ourselves as pioneering technology that will also allow people given new tools, very new tools, much more powerful, that will allow to explore the ocean of data. So you will be able to dive deeper, to be more comfortable when you're swimming around the big data and drilling into it. That's what was inspiring us, and also at least some of us really like the ocean and the sea. So that was resonating well. The one thing that we did want to change is we didn't want to write the Kusto with 8 letters. You can see like it's very hard to write it. So we kind of reduced it. And that's also kind of resembles that we don't keep the data as is, we compress it. Okay, so all data that you send to Kusto is being compressed. It's meaning the same, but we are working more efficiently. So the Kusto that we put is only 5 letters versus the 8 that you have in the original name. So that's why we call it Kusto. Hope this mystery is solved right now. And moving on. So when we started it 9 years ago, like we had a dilemma. Like what we are actually going to do? Like, are we really going to reinvent the wheel, and why is it a good idea? Okay, so I wanted to explain you why it's not very trivial or very to stand up and say, you know what, we actually want to reinvent the wheel. We want to invent the new big engine, and we need to actually to think about what good reasons to do it. So we're looking on the problem domain of the telemetry data that was and still growing exponentially, and trying to understand what is the existing technology that can solve it. So we were looking around, like We looked on the SQL databases, on the databases that were built on top of Elasticsearch or Solr, or Splunk, or other technologies that were open sourced, or maybe not open sourced. And we actually saw that the experience is not very well. It looks like most of the technology is not dealing well with the data. It's not being able to ingest it very fast. It's not being able to process it very fast, or not giving the query capabilities. Even looking on the SQL, like we saw that some of the teams are using SQL as a SQL query language to drill into data, and was feeling like, really, it's playing with Stone Axe to play the piano. Okay, it's not the tool that was invented to do that. SQL was invented in the 1970s, and it was different hardware, it was different profile of people, different data, different insights that people are looking, and all the ability to use SQL to process the data was looking like a wrong thing to do. And another reason that is not mentioned here, but it was a very important one, we actually were pretty bored, okay, with the current thing that we are looking. So we are looking for the next challenge, like we as a team. We were part of the SQL BI team of analysis services. We were not new to the domain of processing. We knew what column store is, and etc. But we actually were looking for the next challenge. So this one, like when we go back to 2014, was looking like a great opportunity. So what we did, we actually started incubation inside Microsoft, 4 people that you saw in the previous picture, and started to work on Kusto. And fast forwarding on what actually the technology pillars that we use in Kusto, we came up with, like during the years, we came up with several pillars that give the power to the Kusto technology as it is. First of all, we wanted to optimize for append-only data streams, for logs, for telemetry, for metrics, for that scenarios. And we went for compressed column store. Okay, so the data is stored as columns, and we're compressing it. We are sharding the data across different machines, so we actually have no scale limits. Okay, we can add more machines, and it's an architectural decision that the data can be sharded, and that's a very powerful thing to do. It also means that the storage and the caching and query is kind of distributed across all these machines, and when the query runs, it runs on all machines in a parallel. And if we're looking on how data is stored or how it's indexed, we added inverted indexes for text. We apply text compression. We put very specific dedicated operators for parsing and regex. They are very specialized in terms of performance optimizations. We added a specific data type support for JSON-like data or semi-structured data. We call it dynamic in Kusto. And it's also very powerful for querying and accessing, both powerful from query perspective and from the performance perspective. Of course, we also have a tiered storage model where the data is resided on different and cached on the different layers, from memory to SSD, and then in cloud, in blob storages. And of course, one of the pillars of all things was the Kusto query language, which was really invented by the team. Evgeny actually invented it in order to be able to express very powerful queries and be also extendable in a way, and so we won't be limited by existing languages. So that was kind of a technology pillars that we started working on. And if you look how it was evolved, like when you fast forward to today, we went to production, and in production, I mean inside the Microsoft in 2015, where we were battle-proving the technology is very capable of supporting telemetry scenarios, and the teams like SQL, Visual Studio, and Power BI, LinkedIn were starting to use Kusto for their own monitoring. Later, and we are also starting to move products to be built on top of Kusto, and then you saw application insights, log analytics, and Sentinel coming up. That was a gradual thing, and I think today every single solution of Microsoft, this slide is kind of outdated, but the amount of teams using Kusto for building their own solutions is enormous. Okay, it's all different industries. It's both security, like Sentinel or Microsoft Defender for Cloud, and it's also finance, and the Azure Cost Management Center is also built on top of Kusto, and also for gaming as a PlayFab. So we'll have all range of different products to be built on top of Kusto. And in 2019, we actually also started to offer Kusto as external platform, like as platform for external customers. And then we saw big teams like Checkpoint, the security, or BAS, which is the chemical production and builder, start and build their own solutions on top of Kusto, on top of Azure Data Explorer. That's the marketing name that is officially known. So this is how it proceeded up to today. We're also part of Synapse, and we also have offering in Azure. And last year, we also started to offer a free tier for those who want to start playing with Azure Data Explorer for free and no charge. I will talk about it later on later slides. So that's how it started, and let's see. I wanted to do some kind of interactive quiz. I'm not sure that Teams will allow us, but let's try. Okay, I do want this session to be interactive. Please feel free to ask questions or interrupt me in the middle, and hopefully it will work. And now I want to check some of your Kusto senses. So I have about 5 questions, and I wanted to kind of hear, or maybe we can write in chat what you think the answers will be. It's an American question. So the first question goes like this: what do you think is the amount of KQL queries that are run daily? Okay, so let's
Sorry,
see.
quickly. Johnny, you have to open the chat so we can actually write into the chat.
Yeah, you can also write in chat some of the questions if you want.
I think that the chat is open or not.
So let's see.
Check messages.
That works, okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a member of the chat.
That's odd because Jörg is writing.
Okay, good. Then don't mind me. Yeah.
Okay, so let's see what people think. Okay. We have Chris that is writing B. Okay, 500 million. D, 1.5 billion is for Ruben. Okay, A, Jenny. Okay. Anyone wants to
I do
participate?
1 billion a day.
1 billion a day, okay. So the right answer, let's see if that works. I don't know. Just need to move. So the right answer is A. It's 3 billion queries a day. Okay, wow. Yeah, there are some weekends and it's a little bit lower, but then also middle of the week, so it's a little bit more than 3 billion, but on average it's 3 billion of queries and growing. Okay, so I have a slide. I had the slide from last year or something like that, and the number was outdated. That was also a disclaimer on the slide before. So these slides are good for today. We see a huge increase in the amount of queries being run. Majority of the queries, by the way, are not the ones that people are writing by hand. Okay, that's like you don't expect people to write queries by hand. So that's probably automations, alerting, or whatever scenarios that are running. I'm pretty sure that's the case. But anyway, it's pretty impressive number. Moving to the next question. Okay, so I already hinted you that the majority of the queries are not interactive, but how many interactive developers, those that actually do write queries or copy paste the text or using some interactive tools, are using KQL queries on a weekly basis? What do you think the answer that for this one? Okay, Chris, B or A? Yeah, you need to decide. It can be both. Okay, York I think it's B. A. Okay, A. Okay, so A. So the actual answer is B. Okay, so we have about 100K developers running, interactive developers, running using it on a weekly basis. But you're not that far away because actually it's changing, and we had some of the spring breaks. The overall community that is using KQL is roughly 500,000. Okay, so it's 5 times more. If you look on on a month or maybe on 90 days, we can see that it's higher. So it depends on the week, and I think that also we can accept answer A. But it's huge developer community like using KQL. That's a huge number to understand. 500,000 people know how to write KQL query, or at least know how to copy paste queries. Okay, and then we'll count that as well. So we should be really happy that that community is growing as well. Okay, we see this community growing and using more and more powerful methodologies of the KQL query language. The potential is huge for KQLCafe as well. So moving to the next question. Okay, this one is about accepting the data into Kusto as a whole, all products together. Okay, so the overall, like if you look on the whole Kusto footprint, different like external customers, internal customers, log analytics, Sentinel, all together, how many data do you think Kusto ingest on a weekly basis, like holding a week? Okay, A. C. D. Okay. I should have been offering prizes for people. I'll do it next time. Okay, Chris, B. Okay. So let's see the right answer. D. Okay, you're right. It's actually D. It's actually D. It's an enormous number, so it's hard to believe. I understand. I was also surprised by when I prepared this quiz, but it's actually more than 1 hexabyte of data being ingested weekly. Okay, it's more than 160 petabytes a day, but that's the footprint that we operate. Okay, so that's only 1 week. We can try to calculate how many data we are ingesting in a second, but yeah, it's a huge data that people have in need to submit for ingestion because they want to query it. That's really huge amount of insights that waiting.
How many data centers is that to have?
Well, that's probably a little bit. It's also very interesting question. I don't have this data because it's more. Some of the data is also historical. I could drill it, but we can try to estimate. Because people are keeping the data for around like an average for around 14 days. So you can kind of try to multiply this number by 10 or something like that. But I didn't check it. But and again, the data is growing. So it's when I looked on these numbers like a few months ago, it was lower. So we also see increase in data coming in. We also see the increase in the queries coming in. We also see increase in the community growing. So it's all very good indications. And when we started, like I go back when we were looking and predicting that the data is growing exponentially, we see it as well today. It didn't change. The potential is huge. The amount of data waiting to be analyzed is huge. And that's kind of very interesting insights, like only by looking at that. So let's continue. Let's continue with the quiz. I didn't spoil, I hit the but maybe you didn't spot, like what is the amount of Azure Cloud running KQL queries? Like imagine all the cores that Azure Cloud has and try to predict how many percentage of Kusto KQL queries are running that. Like just to imagine the scale.
Does this include playbooks?
No, it's not included. Like the question if it's only the Kusto
but
backend.
playbooks can run KQL queries.
Yeah, but what I mean is the by backend. Okay, so the playbooks will be additional ones, and the frontend will be additional ones, and front of log analytics will be an additional one. I'm just talking about the Kusto as an engine. Like I represent the Kusto engine team, the backend, the engine itself, the database. Like I'm talking only about it. I have no idea how many other cores are having. So. Right. Okay. So yeah, so the right answer is C. Actually, it is. Like Kusto is about 3% of the Azure cloud. So imagine all the Azure cloud, and it's 3%. So what it actually means? It means that Kusto is actually one of the largest services that Microsoft has in terms of scalability, in terms of scale, in terms of footprint, in terms of whatever you think. It's one of the largest services. It's probably one, like, it's definitely one of the top 5. And that's a huge service to run. Like we operate on a great scale. Moving on, next question. And this is the last one. Okay, so looking on the Kusto KQL itself, what do you think the set of the operators that are top 3 most used? Okay, like the combination is also about priorities. Like if you look on the A, take where count, it means that the take on the first place, where on the second, and count on the third. Okay, so that's the top 3. Like if you're looking on the, okay, so we have B, 2B, and 2D. Nice. So yeah, guys, you're right. Like it's D. Okay, if I'm including project and extend because they're kind of like very similar, but that's how it works. Like projecting is not, and then extending together, then having the most. Where summarize, not far away from that will be also take. So whoever voted for take, not far away. Like people like exploring the data, but still this is the mix. Again, at least for the time frame I checked. It may be different in a couple of weeks. That's how people usually use. Like, it actually makes sense, okay? Because what people doing with data, they're not just fetching it outside or looking on it or counting it. That's too simple to do. They actually want to do something more powerful. And that also was the way that we thought about data. Like, let's say that you have 2 million of errors. You're not going to read them or print them and then list them and read before you're falling asleep. You do need some very powerful tools, like extending, calculating something out of it, filtering, and summarizing. Okay, at least you want to count if you have 2 million errors, to count it by machine, to count it by area, to do something with that. So when we were looking on the problem domain, we said, no, it's not enough to be able to filter the data very, 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 very easily, like whatever Elasticsearch does or Solr. We always predicted ourselves, we need to be building an analytical engine, a column store engine that will be able to cope with and doing natively joins and aggregations, because that's what we feel that we need. So that kind of resonated well in a sense that after 9 years, we were pretty correct. That's how people are using the data. They're filtering, they're projecting, calculating additional columns, and aggregating afterward.
Are there any operators where you feel like, we invested so much time, but nobody's using them, or like operators that should get a little bit more love?
You mean did we introduce some operators that are readily used?
Yeah, and where you feel like maybe because of unawareness or.
Yeah, I think it's a fair question to ask. There are several operators that I would be very glad to deprecate, maybe. Like we have top hitters, which is kind of predictive top operator that not always giving you the exact results. We're thinking that maybe people will be interested in it, but it's actually on the top, on the bottom. And some others that just very useful, but they're useful for a specific reason, and we love them as they are. So there are all different things. There are some new operators that are coming in. I'm going to talk about a few of them lately, so you can see them maybe on the bottom of the stack. And yeah, about raising the awareness or trying to change the pattern that people are doing with the previous operators, like doing workarounds, just takes time. So we need time to educate. And I have one example of those also in the slides a little bit later. So I'll talk about them and I'll mention what I actually meant.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving Moving forward, I wanted to go over talking about introducing you in the specific areas, maybe not all of them because we're kind of short of time, but talking about what KQL, what Kusto can give you in the different aspects, and talk briefly about the capabilities. Maybe they are less known for your audience. And I'll start with Geospatial, and I also see that Michael Brichko joined us, and he is actually the developer behind this. So Michael, great work. So what are actually the Geospatial query capabilities? Think about data that has some essence of geographic locations. It can be trucks that are moving, or it can be some merchandise that is moving around. It can be weather conditions. Actually, there is a whole series of data that has attachment with geo coordinates that usually come with the polygons or lines on dots. So it's a whole geometry based on the Earth. And the capabilities that we have is ability to aggregate using geohashing. That's the different geohashing using S2 cells or H3 cells. It's ability to aggregate the data to a specific region. Very powerful, actually, because if you think about it, you want to know how many accidents happened in what area. So how do you do it? You want to aggregate. We saw that aggregation, the summarization is a very powerful thing to do. With geodata, the way to do it is with geohashing. Okay, so we have different geohashing capabilities that are available, like standard ones, that people are using in different scenarios. And measuring distance, of course, like we want to measure distance between the point and the line, or check the presence of specific polygon or specific point in the polygon, or actually the cut polygons and find the intersections of them, or increase a line into larger objects. So Kusto offers a very wide range of geospatial functions, geospatial functionality, and it's very useful. And when we're looking on our competitors, we think that we perform at very good scale, at very good cost performance points, and also in terms of functionality. So if you think about some geospatial scenarios, that's certainly you want to learn these capabilities. Functions starting with geo, the prefixes are very, very clear. And we have a very good documentation that Michael and the team wrote about this functionality. Moving next, a different theme is called time series. Time series is helping also different industries like IoT scenarios or manufacturing scenarios, or scenarios where different detections happen, and you can relate to a series of events as a signal, okay? Some metrics that are changing over time. It can be also performance counters by the way of machines. You can spot the anomaly of CPU spiking. We can spot that the amount of logins for specific machines or specific device are increasing. So time series is not exactly like we look at, if you can imagine something as a series of events or series of with the numbers based on a timeline. We do have a very special functionality that allows to detect and find different interesting things in time of it. It's been used widely also in financial industry. Like the cost management uses it to find undercharged or overcharging specific customers due to different events of wrong performance counters or wrong metrics being evicted, and the detection is very fast, much faster than the competitors, or much faster than other training models.
Question for because you have the series decomposed anomalies, but I like the operator because it's a good way to find anomalies in sign-ins or in even in-tune devices which fell out of compliance. But I always find it hard to explain how does it work, because there's the reference to Tukey and how he might have done things, but there's no easy way to explain the scoring and the numbers of records you have. And is there an easy way to explain that one?
Well, for the series decomposed anomalies, you just set your own threshold. Like, depending on what you're asking for, you can set your own threshold.
Yeah, you can set the threshold and you set the way from the baseline, but if you have 200 devices and 30 are non-compliant, then it's an anomaly, and then
okay,
it gets
I
a
see what
score.
you mean.
But
Okay,
the
yeah.
relation,
Yeah, that's something for someone else. Yeah.
Yeah. So the way that the series decompose anomalies works, it's actually based on ability to decompose the timeline signal into baseline, into seasonal and residual part. And for those scenarios that you don't find the decomposed anomalies working perfectly because it's kind of tailored for different, maybe a different scenario, you can still use the series decompose abilities and take on the residual part and then do something with that, like feeding it to maybe a pre-trained model. So it's still useful. Okay, so it allows you to.
But do you use like for the statistical decompose value, do you focus on the p-value, or do you just do it on a case-to-case basis?
So the way, like, it's actually patented technology, but the team here worked on designing it. The way it works, it actually trains itself using some kind of period of the signal, and then it uses itself to understand what will be the part that it needs to remove. So it's self-trained.
I will be honest with you. So far, the only use I gotten ever from the decomposed anomalies was where I knew what the anomaly was.
Okay. So did you find it useful? I'm not sure I got.
No. I could find the anomalies based on what I knew that the anomaly was. But my question is, do you have any, considering it's a machine learning algorithm?
Yep.
Is it possible that you could share?
I think I can. I think
information.
I think I can. You can write me an email, and also you can connect to a person. I think we
All
also.
right, perfect. Thank you. That would
I think we also wrote either a paper or a very detailed blog post. It's also was one of the team that we are very proud of, having the specialized people who work on the time series.
No, somebody wrote in the chat that the threshold. I know what the threshold is. I'm not asking about that.
Yeah, I think I got your question. I will be able to answer you.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Thank you very much.
So, but there are much more functionality, not just for anomalies, that also like ability to do some other things, some basic things like finding the FFT or doing the almost all the signal processing things that you want to do with a moving window and etc.
My main issue was that the fact that we cannot see the code behind it, so we can only rely on what we can use, like make series, MV expand, MV apply, and so on. It's mostly what you tell us it is.
Okay, I get your point. So you're actually looking how it works behind it. I think we can share. It's either way that we can share the white paper, we can share something more about it, so it will be more comfortable.
Yeah, that would be very much appreciated. Thank you very much.
Yeah, but I can tell you that it's actually also a kind of battle-proof technology because, like I said, like one of the customers that are using it is the cost management, and they find it very useful. So
yes, I use it a lot, even for download detections or for file access in Purview. You can do a lot of cool things.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So I'm moving on. One of the greatest, I think, or more powerful things that we added lastly, but is about sequence analysis. Okay, it's a scan operator. How many of you, by the way, heard about it or using it? Just like
we had a session from Johnny half a year ago. Yeah.
We had it with Mehmet.
Well, I must say that it's one of the most complicated operators that we have in KQL. and we are still thinking if we could do it a little bit easier for specific scenarios. So we're still battling it in a sense, but I think whatever, it's mostly when you use it for what it was not built to be used, but still it's very powerful. So people are capable of doing it with all kind of things. Like here is a simple example. I'll just go over like fast forward with it. It's capable of defining a final state machine and looking on the events flowing in and declaring the state of the device. So you can detect when it started, you can expand and actually stick to every single event when it's working and when it stopped. Also putting a timestamp saying that it's working up to 5 minutes after it started. So but it's powerful in the sense that it allows you to do sequence detection. Very complicated one. One of the scenarios of sequence analysis is user analytics. Okay, or actually understanding what users are doing when landing a web page. Do they click a green button or white button or whatever? So this kind of analytics, that was what one of the scenarios that we invented it for. But it's so powerful that we do a huge uptake, and hundreds of different customers are using it for different industries as well. It's both for automotive, for detecting the charges of the batteries, moving to user analytics, of course, and detecting the state of different machines in security. So it's actually a very flexible way of doing some kind of coding some temporal logic that shows on the timeline and out of stream of events defining the sequence.
I use this one. Yeah, go first. Thank you.
How different this is from the time window join with some modifications?
First of all, it will be much more powerful and performant. Probably also, in a sense, more simple way of doing it with the steps. Also, it allows you to gather some state as you go through the sequence, or even get into a partial sequence, something that you will be very, very hard to do with the join. And so I guess there will be cases when you just can't explain yourself with the join, or maybe it will be just too complicated to do it.
No. I'm not talking about the joins and so on, but there's a specific thing in Kusto called time window join, and this looks like you have 3 steps that do something, and then
So the time window join is something when you actually expand the key and you take the 2 parts, 2 events, and you need to join them together. But
yeah, exactly.
So here it's much more powerful. You can actually move to the third step only if there are less than 5 minutes that will move before that, and you had some several conditions.
Okay. No, understand it. Yeah, okay. Now it makes perfect sense. Oh, this is actually pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a very powerful thing to do. Like if you like, it's very simple.
No, this is actually really cool. I love this. Yeah. Okay. Sorry for disturbing.
Yeah, there are some more ways how you can also tell that give me only the final state or give me all the states. Some like in our docs we have more explanation in cases, but it's really powerful way to do it. And again, I think that amazing cases that I saw is when actually analyzing the batteries, the electric batteries of cars being charged, and there are very complicated scenarios on when they predict.
This is going to be huge in automated analysis.
Right.
If you have to automate something through like logic apps and so on, something like this is going to be really huge.
Cool, great to hear. So you can read in our docs, and it's pretty new one, like new. It's a 1-year-old operator, but that's one of the examples that's something that takes time to learn and teach, and people to understand, to realize the value.
I use this one also quite a lot, but where I sometimes run into is I use the with match ID because I use, for instance, sign-in logs, and I want to make funnels for each user. But sometimes I get the feeling that the one funnel isn't always related to the same user. It's when a user has multiple logins within the period, then it's sometimes a bit offset. Is that possible?
If you have examples, we can look into it, but I don't. It does mean that the data coming in should be serialized in a sense. So you either to order it by time. It's actually processing of step by step.
What I understand is like the T, as it said, serialized. The signing logs have to be serialized before you do any action.
Yeah, it will yield an error if you don't. So you need to state that the serialization is if you do ordering before. Then
but that's not an issue. Usually, like before you do anything about serialization, you either order it or anything in that sort of. Yeah, it's not a problem. I love this function. I really love it.
Great to hear. Okay, I'm moving on. So we do invested a lot in advanced text analytics because, like, when we envisioned how people will use the data, that's one of the parts that was very important to us. We're coming from SQL business intelligence analysis services. It had no power of dealing with text, and we were pretty sure that we must provide some functionality of taking a text and being able to operate it in a very powerful and very performant way. So we have few operators, like the parse operator, that can take the huge string and you can find tokens into it. The new operator that we added is parse KV, parse K value, and actually was doing that by request of Sentinel team that said that many of the parsers that the community writes is using regular expressions. They are error prone and they are very slow. And there was like their top one request about a year ago when they came and say, you must do something about like the key value pairs appearing in the text. It can be either key 1 equals value 2 or whatever. It can be very huge scenarios. And that's where we added a specific parse KV operator, which is very powerful. And also we need to teach the community how to use it, okay, when to use it and move all the parsers. So that's another example when you see that still the regular expression parsers that were written before the parse KV existed, they're still there, okay? And rewriting them takes amount of time, but taking advantage of parse KV is a huge advantage. It works better, it's easier to use, and it's giving much more predictive results. For text analytics, we also added a parse, many of the parse functions, native functions of parsing URL path, CSV, user agents, all this, we invested a lot when building them. And of course, like for all the other cases, we do have a regular expression for general purpose parsing.
Cool.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I think cool because the last two slides that you showed were actually topics that we have been trying to address in our previous shows. So I'm quite happy and excited that we seem to focus on the right things with the community.
We love talking with community and love talking with our customers, and we are adding like all the functionality that we added is because somebody asked for it. Like we don't add because we wanted it in the first place. And also like this is the topic that for the cybersecurity capabilities, like over past 2 or 3 years, I think we had a huge request and huge like the industry demand for being capable of doing things like looking for specific IP address, what we was doing for past 3 years, like looking for some detections. And we went back and we invested a lot in improving the scenarios for IPv4 and IPv6 lookup. So for IPv4, we implemented specific indexes for data. So the data is being indexed during the ingestion, and we were able to improve the queries for IPv4 lookups, for example, by 200 times. Okay, so it was like day and night difference between these capabilities. So the specific IPv4 functions, we can see them here. They are matching and they're utilizing the indexes that we have inside. We added a specific function to look up and doing the joins using IPv4. It's also like and also thinking about how the net mask and CIDR notation works, and etc. So that allows you to actually bring the data from someplace and understanding what these IP addresses belong to. So that was also a common scenarios that you can look and use it. And of course, we added some of the free text parsing capabilities, like parsing the URLs, parsing the command line arguments, parsing the version. They were all added because the security teams inside Microsoft and outside Microsoft were already in it. We are working very closely with Checkpoint, with Trend Micro, with Zscaler, and other security vendors, and of course also Microsoft ones, and we are listening very carefully about what functions or capabilities they need, because we believe that this community of cybersecurity is a very important one, and it's like it has to deal with lots of threats coming up lately, or understanding that they are increasing very seriously. So that's we invest a lot of in this area as well. Let me go. There were some questions in the chat that maybe you want me to answer. Like Johnny and Alex, just let me know if let me know if you want me to look on some of the questions, and then I'll go back to slides. Oh, guys, like feel free to jump into the air and ask some questions.
Alex, there is a question in the chat about threat hunting. I'm not sure. I couldn't exactly understand the question. So if the author of the question would like to elaborate more, it could be a great opportunity.
Oh.
Okay. So what was the question?
Hi everybody. Mahesh here.
Yeah, please.
Am I audible?
Yeah. Yes.
Sure.
We can hear you. Yes.
Okay. So, and first of all, thank you so much for joining in me for this great session. So what I would like to understand is in our environment we had. Yeah. So in our environment we had Azure Resource Graph and Microsoft Defender for Cloud. So I would want to understand if we can define any Azure Resource Graph queries just to identify the threats from the Azure perspective. So I'm wondering if there is a way to write queries. Yes, I had developed a few workbooks.
Yeah. So
right. That's right.
So we are the Kusto team, and we are providing. We are actually allowing anyone to build a product on top of our code of our service. And Azure Resource Graph is just a team. They may be limiting some of the functionalities, or maybe they are not aligned for specific reasons. So probably the questions that if they are specific about Azure Resource Graph, they should go to that team.
Okay, understood. The reason being we can identify any misconfiguration related, I think, at least from the Azure Resource Graph. Even we can embed those things into the workbook, I believe. But I'm still curious to know, because I would love to explore the things on KQL side of it. So that's where I wanted to understand if we can do something from the Azure Resource Graph side by writing KQL queries.
Yeah, so probably that's the question for Azure Resource Graph. Like we're the team who are providing them a service, and they are building a product on top of it.
But let us try if we find maybe in an upcoming session someone where we can shed some light on applying KQL towards Azure Resource Graph. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, so that's great. So and also one last doubt, please.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, please go ahead.
Yeah. So from the Microsoft Defender for Cloud perspective, can we do writing KQL queries and identifying threats? Anything like that?
I mean, you can always write playbooks combined with KQL queries.
I can try to answer. Like again, that's a different team who's like if you think about layering of things, we're on beneath. Okay, so the Kusto is on beneath on top of Microsoft Defender of Cloud and Sentinel and Log Analytics. Some of the teams either allow to access the data with the Kusto query language. For example, Log Analytics application inside Sentinel, they allow it. Some of them are building it, okay, or thinking how they do it. So I'm not sure if the Microsoft Defender for Cloud are going to open it or on what stage of that doing that. And I think that's again for a specific product team that allows to do it.
I guess in this case, a couple of sessions ago, Alex enumerated the data from the M365 Defender portal. so you can go through the cloud app data from security.microsoft.com to advanced hunting, and there you can enumerate the cloud app events, and then you can see the data.
Okay. Even I'm interested to export the resource graph queries results into Power BI report. Basically, we can achieve that from Log Analytic Workspace, I believe. But I'm really interested if there is a way to export the KQL results of Azure Resource Graph queries into Power BI. That would be greatly helpful just to visualize the data in Power BI.
But okay, so you have the Azure Resource Graph, and then you want your data in KQL and then to Power BI.
Exactly. Example, I will. Yeah. So example for policies, we have Azure policies in environment, right? We can write KQL queries from the Azure Resource Graph, like these are all the individual policy assignment, and we have a compliance statistics for that policies. And I wanted to export those things into Power BI. So there is a simple method from Log Analytic Workspace to export, but it would be great if we had that similar functionality from the Azure Resource Graph side.
Yeah. Okay. So
I'm moving on, because we don't have more time, but I think that many questions that we have is actually for Azure Resource Graph. So I wanted to talk about like where we, the Kusto Engine team, invest, or sneak peek in what we are, like, how the team was built and what we're working on. And it's not exhaustive list. It's not everything that we are doing. It's just a snapshot of things that we are to give you a sense what we are focusing on, what is important to us, and itself, and etc. So we can kind of divide it into slices. When the first slice is perf and cost. Okay, so we do want to improve ourselves. We want to improve our engine. We want to be able to query the data faster, process it faster. You see that we see that the data is growing. Okay, the amount of data is growing, and we see that the amount of queries are running is increasing. We see that the community is growing, and all of this, we want to be capable of improving our engine and providing better cost for the queries. So one of the examples that we did last year was indexes for IP flow. That's something that we released and improved queries quite a bit. The thing that we are reading right now is also indexes for GUID columns, very common ones. Right now in our docs, we are suggesting to use strings because we just didn't add a column GUIDs, and we're reading it. So we're actually making the GUID as a first like the citizen, as very supported citizen on our code base, and it's been rolled out. You don't need to change anything. GUIDs can be used and indexed as any other data type. I mentioned in the beginning of the presentation that we're constantly changing the engine. And right now, the engine that we call today is the Kusto Engine v3. So it actually means that sometimes we need to migrate the data because we store it in a different format. So this project can take a couple of years. Okay, so we are in the process of restructuring the data and migrating the data in a seamless way. You don't actually know about anything of it, but it's actually been changed on the beneath. We're almost done, and it allows us to store the data in a more efficient way and also to query it more fast. So it's huge investment in our team, but it's also connected to the better perf and better performance. We are adding and changing operators in performance. It's something that is ongoing, but it's also an investment in our team. We are looking around, like moving to query external data. We're looking around ecosystem and looking about how we can use the query engine, how we can use KQL to query external data. What do I mean by external data? It's the data sources that are not connected, that are not ingested and not residing in Kusto. So we have a support for MS SQL. We added a support past year for MySQL. We're adding support for PostgreSQL right now. That means not just for PostgreSQL, but any database that implements that protocol. You will be able to define external table if you're using that scenario, if you're using products that allow that, and query it with the KQL. We know how to push down predicates. That's also an improvement that we added last year. We know how to translate the KQL into SQL and push down only the needed operators, like aggregations and filtering. So that's all coming in. We're also adding support for Delta Lake for integrations, to being able to read Delta Parquet files. Looking on the metadata at scale, some customers have scenarios when they have tons of small databases running on a single clusters, and so far we've been limited for 10K databases per cluster, and we're lifting that, allowing having much more granular control of what data lands in which database. It also helps building multi-tenant solutions on top of Kusto. Looking on the new KQL capabilities, we did a new aggregation count distinct for dot specific cases that you need precise distinct count. We're constantly adding scalar functions. It's usually like an easy work to do, so we're adding tens of those per year.
Could you show us that
usually
slide?
Based on the customer requirements. And we're also adding some operators for parse, KV, and scan. And also applying some very cool query capabilities that are coming later this year. Unfortunately, I can't really talk about this right now, but you stay tuned and you will notice when something arrives. It will take us a couple of months or maybe a little bit more, but yeah, we are planning something very, very cool that I'm pretty sure that we'll have. We'll be very, very, very happy to talk about it in a different session.
I was just gonna say, so you will be coming back to us and talk about this.
I will bring someone. Even I will be like the person who develops that. He will be the one presenting it because he will be able to talk about it much more patient than me. But I'm so excited, like thinking of what we are going to add. It keeps me.
But what about
me
like when you
energized.
have like 2 minutes offline?
Sorry?
There are like situations where like 2 to 3 minutes offline with no information, nothing from Microsoft, nothing whatsoever. What do we do then?
Not sure I understood the question.
It's like now you paint us a really nice picture. I really love that. But like, what about the actual practical stuff? There are times that we spend like 10 hours without any possible application. It happened, what was it, last week?
I'm not sure I understand. Can you explain please anything? What?
No. I'm more asking like, how do you mitigate and how you communicate with us when there is something going on and we don't get enough information?
I believe it's not Alexander. They are building.
Yeah, Alex, you can help me here, I think.
Yeah, they are building Kusto, right? They are not operating Microsoft Sentinel or Defender for Endpoint, or when there's problems with the portal, right?
No, like Alex last week, you remember?
Yeah. I know what you talk about, but I don't think that
exactly.
Alexander will be able to answer the question about
all right. Okay,
an operational issue.
Okay. I see what the point is. All right. Understand.
Perhaps you're asking about a customer support. How does the customer?
No. Alex explained it perfectly to me. Alex explained it perfectly.
Sure.
Yeah. Alex's explanation was top notch.
Hello. Is there any way we can subscribe to Kusto News? Like you said, there's the new operator scan. There are other things incoming. Where can
Certainly,
we?
yeah.
So what's the right place?
So we have a tech post blog on Microsoft, and maybe I can share the link with this meeting in the chat a little bit later. So you can subscribe to it. We're also posting it in LinkedIn and many other channels. But the main channel, which is coming with blog posts explaining everything, is our tech blog. So I'll add, and I'm here. It actually was added right now into the chat.
Thank you very much.
Just look for what's new under Azure Data Explorer or Log Analytics, and there you also find usually on a monthly basis the updates. At least there's where we are going.
Right. So a few more minutes, like two more slides that I have. Like if you want to play with the Kusto Azure Data Explorer for free, okay, so just to play with the plain data engine, we have a free offering. So it takes a little bit less than 1 minute to create one. You will get a free cluster that is free forever, and you can use like it can be helpful for storing 100 gigabyte of data and 4 cores with 8 gigabyte memory, and you can always upgrade it at any time. So if you're thinking what it's good for, like one of the examples that we do have, or we did last year, was the Kusto Detective agency that was also developed by our team, like KDA. And the reason that we created it was to actually we wanted to create some kind of neat things. Like I'm a fan of the escape games, of escape rooms, going in. I traveled around the world, and every time I go to some escape room, local escape room. It's really fun to be inside one, and we wanted to create something in the digital world. Okay, so the idea of detective agency, and you are playing a detective, and you have cases to solve with the data, with the free cluster, the one that I mentioned, gives you ability of actually gamifying your experience. And if you're a new one, to learn little bit more get the prizes. We had the real money prizes that people could earn, and badges and ranking. And it was a great success. We launched it in September 22. We had so many great feedbacks. We had more than 10K players around the world in the fan community.
Alexander, like the first part of the whole thing of being like what's called Kusto Detective thing, that's what got me started into Kusto. It was like, what was it, like my 3rd week on the job? I think it was like my 3rd week, and nobody could do Kusto. And I was like, okay, nobody can do it, fuck it, I'm gonna do it.
Love it.
That's how it started. And now I freaking love it. It's the best language ever.
Great to hear that. I completely agree with you. Like the one who was sitting there when it was invented, I remember Evgeny drawing it on a board and explaining the concept to us, and we were kind of scratching the head and saying, you have something. So I really agree with you. Like I love it as well.
Yeah, for the big, what's called big cloud stuff, amazing. I love it.
Excellent.
Best part of it, read only.
Excellent, guys. So I'm done with my slides, and if you have more questions, please jump ahead. This less slips on Sundays, yeah. But then, yeah.
I do have a question, but if someone else wants to go first, then it's okay.
I wanted to ask about dashboards. Any plans to improve dashboards continually?
So yeah, it's a good question. Like I talked about only the Kusto engine, the team that I own. The Kusto team itself is larger, and it also owns dashboards and the web experience and ingestion pipelines and the control plane and SDKs and many more things that I couldn't fit in. And also, I'm not the best person to talk about. But there are ongoing investments in the dashboards and improving them. And if you're interested, maybe we can also we can ask Johnny and Alex also to invite somebody to talk about the dashboards and KQL dashboards and how we can do it. But yeah, there are ongoing improvements on that area as well. I didn't mention that, not just because it's not happening, it's just because I wanted to scope into Kusto Engine, and also I was kind of limited in time.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't realize it's a different team. Thank you.
Do you have your hand up?
Yeah. Do we have a KQL certification process in place? Like we have an official Microsoft certifications. I understand we have ROT, Trent, Muslim KQL, and Detective Agency, but still I'm curious to know that, and I would love to explore the things on that perspective.
Let me try to answer that one. Whenever I do my speech about why people should learn KQL in 2022-3. If you go to the Microsoft certification learning path, you can select anything you want. Azure Architect, software developer, Microsoft Intune admin, you come across KQL learnings everywhere, right? And I also often compare KQL from a historical point of view and how it was growing with PowerShell. And also for PowerShell, there was never ever an official certification, because I think, and I can tell you, we even do this in our company. I mean, how can I judge how good you are in KQL? What is good KQL? If you get the job done with just 2 lines of KQL code, and another one writes 20, well, we might have a debate on efficiency and geekness. But no, I think the short answer is right now I'm not aware of any certification. And I also believe it would be very hard, to send someone in a room and say, well, okay, maybe you have to do those 10 queries. I would rather encourage you, continue to do these detective exercises, and there's a lot of more out there in the community, and just, move forward with your own development.
Yep, sure, Alex. Thanks for responding on that.
Any other questions? Because I also have a nice one, so if someone else wants to go first. Cool. So I'm building a lot of detections, and one of the detections I've been working on is you have in Windows domain, you have the TGT and the TGS, ticket granting service. And if there's a TGS, there's an event, the 4769. It should have been followed within 5 minutes by a 4768 or a 4769. So there isn't any replay attack or something. But if you filter the logs, there are a lot of events, and I tried to use the scan operator to see if there was a 4768 or 9 followed by a 4769, but that was a lot of data for it to process in a large environment. Are there any recommendations to handle those sorts of sorting? Can I use another operator, or would there be a faster way to do that and make it work?
Okay, so I think that it depends on the real case scenario. So maybe we can try to work on offline, and we'll be able to build like a best query. Usually the way to So if you can pre-filter the data and like you need only specific events, that always the best thing to do. And the other ability to kind of to spread the data and actually distribute the query using the partition operator. The native partitioning by some ID, which allows you to shuffle the data across the machines and just use more compute power and be able to fit it into memory. So and then I think that's kind of 2 techniques, basic techniques, but we can try to figure like in your specific case. We can work offline and we'll be able to come with something.
Cool, thank you.
I have another question about anomaly detection. So I've been experimenting with anomaly detection lately, and it catches a lot of spikes. And basically, I would like to find if there's not a spike but continuous failing. That's anomaly, like 2 or 3 anomalies in a row. What would be the best approach for that?
So I think it can still use the anomaly detection because it will actually produce you a vector of 1s or -1s. And then you can use a different function, which is the series function. It's all the series functions that build in on top of it, that you can count how many different, failures in a row. Okay, you can use the FIR, which is the finite impulse response. In giving it a window, for example, 3 or 2 or 4 or 5 buckets, and you can actually go in and sum the signals. So if you're giving it, for example, a window of 3, it will give you it will count and actually count to 3, and then you can filter on where it actually went to the number of 3. So if you have 3 different buckets of the failures, so you'll be able actually to see when it is increasing. Not sure that I explained it very well, but you actually build it in steps. Okay, first you run the anomaly detection, you have them in anomalies. Now you want to count how many of them happened in a row. You can use another series function, series FIR, finite impulse response, that will allow you to count how many of them, like you're given a window, and you're counting how many of them happened during this sliding window as it goes. Okay, so you will be able to detect something that goes like a shape.
Oh, thank you. I wasn't aware of this function. I used mvapply to look at the window and try, but that's not very efficient.
It is very efficient. It will be efficient.
No, my approach, mvapply, wasn't very efficient.
And Michael put also a link. Thanks, Michael, a lot. You're helping a lot in the chat and responding to all questions much faster than me, than I am. Anyway, the way that we look on the Kusto functions on operators is that can be built like Lego blocks. Okay, so you have anomalies, you can build a series function on top of it, another series function. So you can actually always continue and add more functionality on top of it.
Thank you very much.
Great. So if there's no more questions, I'm pretty sure either Alexander or any one of his team will be back on this show. At least I hope so. I found this very insightful. Also a lot of inspiration, a lot of things to actually start looking at as well. As always, when we have someone on our show, usually, at least for me, I leave the show like, okay, where do I find the time to actually catch up on all those things? But yeah, really appreciate it, Alexander, for being with us today. And I would say on behalf of all the KQL freaks on this planet, many thanks for what you and the team have been building for us. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, my pleasure.
I really love the whole Kusto Detective agency, and now Alexander was a big part of it. So really, 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 really appreciate that.
Thank you,
Alexander.
It means a lot to me. A lot to me. Thank you a lot.
Okay, then if no one else has anything to add, do we have another topic? I mean, we're running a little bit late, but I think everybody was happy today to miss dinner, has closed the door after the wife and kids have been screaming for whatever. So then I would say let's call it a day. And you don't have to wait long. As mentioned, end of April, last Tuesday, we'll continue with talking about KQL, and we will have Thijs on our call, Thijs Leconte. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a lovely evening.
Yes, thanks all, and
thank you.
Till next time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.